Ramokgopa with Eskom to provide certainty and clarity on South Africa's nuclear energy safety at the back of recent media reports related to Koeberg nuclear power station. Joining us from Eskom is the chairperson of the board, Mr. Dr. Mteto Nyati, as well as the group chief executive, Mr. Dan Marukane, as well as the group executive for generation, Mr. Begin Malo, and the chief nuclear officer, Mr. Velapinduli. We also have the national nuclear regulator, acting CEO, Mr. Dumisani Maluleke, and we've got the group chief executive for NEXA, Mr. Loiso Kyabashe. Colleagues, with that, and without further ado, I would like to invite the minister to the podium to kick us off with today's briefing. And perhaps also to mention that we've got from the Department of Electricity and Energy, the DDG responsible for nuclear, Mr. Zizamele Mbambo. Minister.
Thank you very much, Tsakani, and good morning to everyone, and just to thank the members of the media once more for being present here and helping us to transmit this very important message to the general public. Let me start by saying that we have accumulated a wealth of experience emanating from how we dealt with the challenges around the load shedding. What we have found to be a major contribution to our ability to ensure that everyone is aligned in the country, is properly informed, was to occasion media briefings so that we were able to have an opportunity ourselves as an authority to communicate directly to the people of South Africa the status of our progress in relation to the elimination of load shedding. And we have since agreed that that template must be carried forward because it allows us to assert our commitment to ensuring that there's transparency in the work that the department is doing. We use this as a basis to inform the general public on the work that we're doing. And in some parts, it's also about knowledge sharing and knowledge transmission. And we have found this to be exceptionally indispensable to the resolution of load shedding, and we're able to carry the public along. And also what these engagements does is to help us to undermine misinformation, disinformation, and propaganda. And in some instances, it can generate a lot of anxiety amongst the peoples of this country. And when it comes to nuclear, that assertion is in fact more acute. Yes, it's acute because the people in the immediate footprint of the Koeberg power station have every reason to be worried about what they read in some of the publications and what they get to hear informally. So I think it's important that as a custodian of the nuclear build program in the country, we occasion this media briefing to be able to share with the general public, even beyond those who are staying within the immediate footprint of the Koeberg power station. I want to mention that Koeberg has been in operation for more than 40 years, and you know that just a year ago we celebrated the extension of life of unit number 2, having received extension of life of unit number 1 a year before. And this extension of life carries us for another 20 years. This is so because Koeberg has been able to operate in a safe, efficient and reliable manner for a period of 40 years plus, with little to no incidents. And it is our intention to ensure that we continue on that track, and how we go forward now, we're going to ensure that there's a great degree of transparency, because we are now entering in the next phase of nuclear generation in our country, what I call phase 2 of our build program. We stood before you about a year ago announcing the adoption by Cabinet of the integrated resource plan, which is nothing but a comprehensive articulation of the energy sources that will underpin our generation capacity in this country. As part of that plan, we asserted that we're going to procure 5.2 gigawatts of nuclear build, with the intention of having a nuclear industrialization plan to support about 10 gigawatts of a nuclear build program. So when matters of this nature comes to the fore, that attempts to introduce some degree of uncertainty in relation to the safety and the safeguards around nuclear, we felt that it's important that we should be able to stand before the country and the public and share with you what the true facts are. And we are going to establish that when the chair of the board and the chief nuclear officer come before us, that in fact this is not an incident that is out of the normal, and also that this is an incident in nuclear terms that is not reportable, and they'll explain to you what that means. But because of the levels of anxiety, we chose the extraordinary step of convening a media briefing so that we are able to provide that degree of clarity and some comfort that hopefully will be generated post this media briefing. It is important in the context of a bigger program, because what we know is that once we start to initiate that build program, there will be invariably in this space voices that would want to oppose, will clarify that which has to be clarified, but we don't want to enter that phase with a cloud of some suspicion in relation to Koeberg. So we want to clear the air so that there's a safe path on the next phase of nuclear procurement in our country. And we are confident that we are going to succeed in that effort. As the IRP makes a point, is that other energy sources, such as solar PV, wind, are supported by the presence of nuclear. So essentially, we see this as a coherent and consolidated energy technologies that will support the IRP. So we read the IRP together, not in isolation of one energy source over the other. So it must be read in its totality. And that's why the IRP is important. And that's why we are referring to it as an integrated resource plan. It's integrated in a sense that it advocates for the multiplicity and diversity of energy sources. So I really want to say to the country that we are safe. There's no reason to be suspicious. Some apprehension, anxiety. We'll clarify that with a great level of detail. We'll also illustrate that the exposure that is at Koeberg is in fact an exposure that we encounter on our daily lives. I'll leave that to the colleagues to share that with some degree of authority and clarity. The net message I want to convey as a minister and the shareholder is that we are proceeding with the nuclear build program. We're looking forward to an additional 20 years of the life of the 2 units at Koeberg as we introduce 5 gigawatts of new nuclear build program. So with this, I'll invite the chair of the board, Dr. Mteto, to, on behalf of the board, also share some perspective. Doc.
Thank you so much, Minister. And I just want to acknowledge some of my colleagues here on the panel, the acting CEO of NNR, Dumisani, the CEO of Nexa, Loiso, GCE for Eskom, Mr. Marukane, and of course our Chief Nuclear Officer, Velapi. Colleagues and members of the media, good morning. So as the minister has indicated, taking back to the time when we used to be addressing load shedding, one of the key things that we made at the time, the decision that we made at the time was that as the Eskom, the new Eskom, one of the things that we're going to be able to do is to be open and honest with South Africa. If there were areas where we felt that we're not doing things right, we would be upfront and be open and accept those areas. In areas where we felt we're doing well, we would equally communicate that. Out of many setbacks, during that time we had many setbacks. We used to come up here and accept the failures that we have had, and also address the question of what is it that we have taken out of those failures, which is really the whole drive that Dan is driving within Eskom, a drive of learning, creating a learning organization. So we have taken that and we've made that as part and parcel of our culture as we go forward within Eskom. When we had this incident, we also felt, as the minister has indicated, that we need to just address it openly and honestly. And I'm going to do exactly that. I won't spend too much time up here, as I think most of this needs to be addressed at an operational level. But I'll try and just pitch myself at a level of the board and also at the level of Eskom. So, to just go now to my short remarks, on the 30th of June, 2nd of July, and the 7th of July, during a scheduled maintenance, there was elevated airborne radioactive contamination was detected inside controlled sections of the Koeberg power station. These events were fully contained within the facility. There was no release into the environment, no risk to the public. The recorded levels were extremely low, less than the radiation exposure from using your cell phone for several minutes. All protocols were followed. The National Nuclear Regulator was engaged throughout. Our teams responded promptly and professionally as expected at a nuclear facility. These incidences occurred in a highly controlled environment and demonstrated the strength of our safety systems and the capability of our employees. Koeberg has now operated safely over 40 years, as the minister has indicated. Unit 1 marked its 40-year milestone in 2024 with a license extended to 2044. In November 2025, the nuclear regulator approved a 20-year extension for Unit 2 up to 2045. Both units will continue delivering approximately 1.9 gigawatts of clean, reliable baseload power for the next 2 decades. They join around 120 nuclear reactors worldwide that have safely operated beyond their original design life. This achievement represents the depth of expertise, the disciplined execution, and strong leadership within our nuclear team. It shows what is possible when competent people are supported by clear direction and a culture of accountability. Building on this foundation, Eskom is advancing a 5.2 gigawatt of new nuclear capacity by 2042, in line with the Integrated Resource Plan of 2025, with the potential for further expansion to support industrialization and long-term energy security. In August 2025, we received environmental approval for a 4 gigawatt facility at Dana Fontaine. Processes are also underway for sites at Taepond and Bantam's Klep. Our nuclear program goes beyond electricity generation. South Africa already supplies about 20% of global medical isotopes. The nuclear build will strengthen this contribution to healthcare, whilst creating meaningful opportunities for universities and related industries through skills development and local participation. We are approaching delivery with pragmatism, prioritizing proven technologies, strong governance, and bankable structures. Our Group CEO, Dan Marukane, and his executive team are driving this work with focus and discipline. So, ladies and gentlemen, Koeberg's long track record and the way the recent incidents have been handled both confirm that we have the systems, the skills, and leadership to operate nuclear assets safely and to deliver the next generation of nuclear capacity for South Africa. So this is about reliable energy, developing critical skills, and building a future for our country. So to conclude, our mission and our purpose as Eskom is to be powering growth sustainably. And this, the drive that we are doing, the build that we are preparing for, and the fact that we've been able to maintain this nuclear facility for 40 years and will be doing so for the next 20 years, it talks to our passion and our focus to make sure that we're powering growth of this country sustainably. So with that, I would like to invite Velapi, who is our Chief Nuclear Officer, to address us. Thank you.
Good morning, Minister, Chairman of Eskom, the TCE, the CEOs of NEXA and the NNR, our Group Executive in Generation, and the DDG. Members of the media, thank you for having us, and good morning to you and to the public. I'm here today, I'm Velapi Ntuli, the Eskom Chief Nuclear Officer. I'm here today to give you factual account of what has been transpiring at Koeberg, so that we inform you and the public. First things first is Koeberg is operated in line with global safety standards. During normal operations, the containment building is completely sealed, and workers are not allowed unless it's under a special permission from the power station general manager. But during outages, we do open containment for work activities to continue. However, before we do that, what is important is all the nuclear fuel that's in containment, it is transported safely to the nuclear fuel building. As I will show with you in the presentation, it is the slide of the containment building. This building is purposefully built to be kept under negative pressure, meaning that we are not releasing anything to the environment in an uncontrolled manner. During outages, as we indicated, there is no fuel in containment, and therefore there is no potential for a nuclear accident, and we cannot release an active iodine to the public, which will require us to issue potassium iodide tablets. So, as I'll take you through the presentation, but it was important to state up front here that under no circumstances we had issued any potassium iodide tablets. We also have robust controls in place to ensure that we minimize radioactivity to our workers, but also to monitor them as they leave site. As our workers leave site, they live through a series of monitoring instruments. As you can see on the slide, there's over 6 different instruments that our workers would go through when we release them to site. What do this give us? It gives us assurance that everyone that has been on our site, when they leave site, they are free of contamination, and they've not been exposed to any radioactivity that's more than what is allowed, as a limit. Getting closer to the events that had happened, what we have seen, or the events that have been reported, they have to do with the steam generator eddy current testing. So steam generator eddy current testing, before we did the life extension at Koeberg, we had to change our steam generators per unit. It was 3 steam generators per unit. They have all operated for the first time, and immediately after the outage, so after the first cycle of operation, we have to do eddy current testing. So what is eddy current testing? Is a magnetic probe that we put through the tubes of each steam generator, and making sure that the wall thickness of that tube is appropriate to prevent release of radioactive within our systems at Koeberg. We know, and it's common in the industry, that when you do this activity, it will generate localized radioactivity. So we plan for it, and I will show you what type of steps do we take to plan for it. So we know as we do this, it generates air, and that air dislodges small particles that are radioactive, and those become airborne. So to deal with that, we implement a diverse radiation protection protocols to protect our workers, to protect the public and the environment. The first type of protocols that we implement is the engineering safeguards. In the engineering safeguards, because we know that there is going to be localized radioactive material, which is airborne, we put tents around the steam generator that we are going to do eddy current testing in, and we also put what we call PVU, which is a portable ventilation units that continuously clean up the air in that tented environment. And all of this, it's happening inside containment. We also put up additional radiation protection monitors around the tent area to pick up if there's any increased activity. We have further administrative controls, which will then determine each and every worker that's going to that system, how much dose they are allowed to pick up, and what is the rate of that dose that they will be picking up. We then further prescribe the type of clothing and protective equipment that our workers, as they go in there, they should wear. So these are all the controls that we put in to prepare for this. Right? Our protocol also further dictates that in an event of an alarm, right, we will then stop all work, we'll evacuate our workers, and then we'll conduct what we call RP surveys, radiation protection surveys, and we'll determine what the cause is that we are having the elevated alarms, or why we had an alarm. Then once we verify that the conditions are okay, that's when workers will then return back to work. So this we do as a standard, operating procedure. So getting back closer to the events that have been reported and what really happened. So there's been 3 in the newspapers that had been spoken to. We have added another occurrence that we had on 16th of July, for transparency, to ensure that, there's clarity in the media. So on the 30th of June, we had a dose rate alarm going on. So when our workers are in that area, you have what we call electronic personal dosimetry that you wear. So this did not have to do with airborne contamination. It was an instrument that just checked the amount of radiation that you receive. So when that happened, as our employees or workers are trained, they reported to our radiation protection section. Our work was stopped to try and understand why did it alarm? So when you are issued with this instrument, there are alarm levels that are set up to trigger you to leave the area, and then we go and investigate. It does not mean necessarily that there's something wrong, but it's a further measure to protect our workers. So the area was surveyed and no significant issues were found, and workers were allowed to return. So there was no incident of airborne at that point. So this is one of the events that had been reported and was answered by the regulator on the media. But as Eskom, because it was not an airborne related event, we did not count it. Hence the difference between the 3 that were mentioned by the National Nuclear Regulator and the 2 that we are mentioning. Then on the 2nd of July, we had rising radioactive trend in one of our monitoring instruments. As I've indicated to you, those are placed exactly for that reason, for us to monitor and see what the trend is doing. Then a precautionary evacuation was ordered. However, as our employees were leaving the containment building, then the alarm, the area monitor alarmed, indicating the presence of an airborne radiation. It was 31 workers that were evacuated at that point in containment, and our processes and procedures require that those 31 workers be subjected to additional surveillance, which is a whole body count. A whole body count, the purpose of that is to understand the internal contamination that you might have. However, to good practice and what we have learned previously, we said anyone that had been in containment that day, for their peace of mind and transparency, if they wanted to also undergo a whole body count, they can. So all in all, there were 245 additional workers that underwent a whole body count. So to be clear, when we evacuated containment, it was only 31 workers. The other workers which were in containment at a certain instance, not at that particular moment, at a certain instance, they also went through for a whole body count. The reason for that, it was a faulty PV unit, the portable ventilation unit. The cord of the unit had bent out. We are still trying to investigate what the cause of that was. On the event of the 7th of July, once again, our radiation protection team was monitoring the instruments, and we were doing eddy current testing, and they started to see the leakage from the tent into the containment. And they then preemptively again ordered an evacuation of workers in that area. And after all the workers had been evacuated, the area monitor alarm still alarmed. Okay? It was not mandatory as per procedure to take them through a whole body count, but we requested those employees to go through whole body count. In this instance, it was only 14 employees. Most of them, some of them were busy with eddy current testing, and the other balance was our radiation protection staff that was in containment, so no one else. But there were 7 other additional employees that then wanted to go for a whole body count, with which we allowed them to do. So the reason for this, it was again associated with a portable ventilation unit, which the power supply, there was a challenge with the power supply. It looks like that it had been dislodged from the power socket. Then the recent event that we had, we again saw an increasing trend of airborne contamination during steam generator testing, and we ordered that work to stop. There was no alarm at this point, and the area was again cleaned up. So why are we seeing so much? After a steam generator replacement outage, this is to be expected because of corrosive material that accumulates given the amount of work that gets done during a steam generator replacement. So when you are replacing steam generators, it's a huge exercise within the plant. You cut open most of your primary system, and that is why we're saying, and other industries have seen this. All right. On the July 16 incident, there were no, there was no procedural requirement to have a whole body count done. So what are the results and how the results look like? Because all these results we have captured. We are still finalizing the results of the 16, the volunteer, the people that do it voluntarily. So the results are summarized in this graph. So I would like to start first on the graph on your bottom left. The graph on your bottom left is for the 31 individuals that were in containment on the 2nd of July. The one that it was mandatory for them to do a whole body count after the alarm had alarmed. As you can see, about 20 people, their dose was 0 out of the 31. And from there, the maximum dose that, 0 microsievert. And from there, the maximum dose that was received by the balance was 2 microsievert. Right? But as we have indicated, 245 people went in to do a whole body count, which was not mandatory. Those results are reflected still on the left graph, but at the top. So over 190 people had a dose of 0. Right? The highest dose that was picked up on that incident was between 11 and 20 microsievert. And the graph still there, it also reflects the incident of the 7th of July. As we also can see, the highest there that was received, it was also around 2 microsievert. So what does this mean? This means that the maximum during all these events that our workers received was 20 microsievert. So what does it mean from our limits that we have agreed for? If you are a radiation worker at Koeberg, what you are allowed to receive is 20,000 microsievert. So you need to compare 20 microsievert and 20,000 microsievert. So per year, you are allowed to get a dose of 20,000 microsievert, all right? But in some cases, if it's required, you can even go up to 50,000 microsievert in a year. All right. The US industry, so our limits are similar to that of French stations, so it's industry similar. The US, they do not have the 20,000 microsievert. Their employees are, allowed to get 50,000 microsievert. If you are a member of a public and you come to our facility, you are allowed to get a dose of 1,000 microsievert. So I want us to contrast the 20 microsievert that this team received and the 20,000 microsievert that this team received. All right. So, getting to the issue of issuing potassium iodide tablets, they were not necessary for 2 reasons. The first reason, the dose, as you can see, it was very low, 20 microsievert, all right? But also the reason that potassium iodide tablets were not necessary. Their purpose is to saturate your gland with iodine, all right? And why is that important? That is only important when you have a fuel melting or an incident with your fuel. As I've indicated in my earlier slide, the fuel currently is not even in the containment building. It's safely stored in the fuel building, and we are not in an accident condition. So there is no release of a radioactive iodine, which is iodine 131. So it is not present. So even if we were to give our employees potassium iodide tablets, it would not help them, because this form of radiation that they are picking up is from cobalt 58. So we did not issue any potassium iodide tablets purely because they wouldn't help. And secondly, it was not a fuel-related incident that we're dealing with. It's a normal corrosive products that were airborne. Just to maybe put it in a way that you would that might make sense for the members of the public, we are all exposed to radiation. Whether you work at Koeberg or in your normal course of life, there are sources of radiation that you are exposed to. If you go for an X-ray, it's assumed about 100 microsievert that you would get. If you go for a mammogram, about 400 microsievert that you would get. It is estimated that from our normal conducting our daily activities over a year, we receive about 2,400 microsievert of radiation. And I think you can contrast that with the 20 microsievert of radiation that was received by 4 of our workers. So what does that mean? It mean that this was not a reportable incident. This is within our course of business as we operate. So, in conclusion, we believe that our radiation protection team acted swiftly and within procedure and professionally to deal with this issue. And this was in line with their training. Our systems that we've put in place, as I've indicated, that we do expect this, all our systems and safeguards that we've put in place, they worked. And where one didn't work, like our PV unit, when it didn't work, the backup worked, which is the area monitoring system that then, inform everyone of a potential airborne event. We remain committed to being transparent and also to ensuring that we comply with all the statutes that have been put forward by our national nuclear regulator. And we will continue to engage with the members of the public, in a transparent manner. From a procedure adherence point of view, we have robust procedures in place. Our workers are trained to ensure that we safely manage any nuclear condition, from normal operations all the way to when we do have things that are deviating from normal operations and within established standards. That is my last slide. Thank you.
Thank you very much to the Minister and the Eskom Board Chair and GCE for providing this opportunity to explain to the public on the developments that have taken place at Koeberg and giving certainty on South Africa's nuclear landscape, and to Mr. Nduli on the operational technicalities at Koeberg Nuclear Power Station. We will now take questions from members of the media. We know that there are those who are also following this briefing online, but we will start with questions in the room and then we'll go to Takalani for online questions. By a show of hands, colleagues, are there any questions in the room? Skara, any other? Okay, Skara from Takalani. So, Skara, once you've posed your question, we'll go to Takalani for online questions. Please introduce yourself and the media house you represent.
Thank you, Takalani. My name is Ramokgopa Eskom, Africa. And thank you to the panel for the presentation. I think school, on micros. I felt like I was in engineering class. I'm only a journalist. But let me ask, are we or are you saying, and I'm not sure we're going to attempt to answer this incident, as reported at least, was just a storm in a team? That's my first question. And I want to touch on three themes. I'll be very quick. It's on the plant operations, accountability, and just looking ahead. Since the event between the 30th and the 7th, has there been any additional inspections that have been carried out on at Koeberg Unit 2? On the accountability part, and I think that would be informed by what I mentioned earlier, it being a storm in the teacup. Has it been established or identified of the failures where it went wrong? Is it, I would say, equipment or the human error? Just lastly, looking ahead, what measures are being implemented to prevent such or similar incidents? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Zaban. I have a question from Chair Rogers, Ramokgopa. My apologies, it's a bit longer, but I will try to be as low as I can so that everything is captured. The question is, according to a report received by Ramokgopa, these incidents happened in Unit 2, which has been offline in order to carry out a stress test to the reactor containment building. Apparently, there were workers inside the containment building, and in order to protect them from radiation, there was allegedly a shield set up inside the building, a building that was supposed to stop radioactive particles from reaching the workers. This shield reportedly failed 3 times. If that is the case, then this should not have happened, and suggest may have been negligence or misplaced reliance on some of the equipment used. Is there any proof of that? That is the question. Or do you wish to refute this? And what are the potential consequences? And will an investigation be launched into this alleged shield failure? It does not seem that any of these 3 incidents are considered catastrophic and reportedly not radioactive material lead to outside the reactor. Thank you.
Thanks, Takalani. If those are all the questions, we will then get to responses. I think we'll start with Mr. Velapi, and then we'll get more refinement. Thanks.
Thank you for the questions. So maybe the first question around whether it's the storm in the teacup. I think there is emotions when it comes to radiation, and rightly so. So people might feel, and fear for their safety. But what is factual is what was received by workers which are trained, and what is allowable is negligible. So we can say that. But emotions, there are people that would feel that maybe their safety or safety of their loved ones might be in jeopardy. But this was not the case, right? Are there any additional inspections that are being done? So as part of what we indicated, every time we have an alarm, we do stop and try and understand what happens. And if there's additional measures that we can take, we do take those. For example, you saw when we had the additional event, we now ordered preemptive evacuation, make sure that the radioactive material settles down, and then only then workers can return to work. right? The other one around the measures around equipment failure. So we did have an equipment failure that we still need to understand why that equipment failed. The second event, it was linked to a temporary loss of power supply that we also trying to still figure out what happened. But upfront, I cannot say there was any negligence that happened in these two cases. All right. Then there was a question around the shielding and the tent. Maybe just to try and explain that again. The tent is purposefully built to localize radiation within the confines of that tent, and we do have workers working in that area. All right. And the containment building still maintained its function. There was no challenges with containment building. It still maintained its function. So the tent, it was not to it was not to assume the function of the containment building, but it's within the containment building where we try to localize. And why do we do that? Is because we do not want the airborne contamination settling everywhere in containment. So we try to localize it into a certain area. Once we are done with that work, then we can clean up that area. Then we do not have to clean up the entire containment building. So when you start having a PV unit that doesn't work properly, then of course air will leak out of the tent into the containment building. And that's why we stop work and make sure that, our PV units are working properly to localize where the airborne is. Do you understand? Sorry? You answered the dairy maverick question, I'm struggling with the street. Yeah. Okay. All right, okay.
Thank you, Mr. Ntuli, for those responses. Colleagues, I don't know if there are any further questions, but all the questions from the first round have been covered. Are there any further questions? I see Takalani raising his hand, but we'll start in the room again. Any follow-up questions? If not, Takalani, please take us through.
Thank you. There's a question from William representing Ministerial. And the question is, can you please ask the panel to explain what the portable ventilation unit is supposed to do and how its failure caused the other detection to break? Thank you. That should be the last question. Thank you.
Thank you, Takalani. We'll refer to Mr. Velapi once again, and then perhaps Minister will come after Mr. Velapi just to close today's briefing. Thanks.
Thank you for that question. The portable ventilation unit, it's installed inside the tent. So the steam generator area, we coordinate with the tent to ensure that we localize airborne contamination into that tent. But to clean up the environment inside the tent, will then deploy a portable ventilation unit. So that portable ventilation unit is supposed to clean up the air within the tent. So in this case, in the first instance, that was that led to airborne escaping from the tent. It's when it failed. So what that means is that the air within or the capacity to clean up the air within the tent is degraded, and that's why you are getting an accumulation of material and subsequently leaking to the area monitoring system that is outside the tent. So that's what it's used for, and that's what, when it fails, happens. Thank you.
No, thank you very much to VLAP and the team led by the chair of the board, Dr. Tetonyati, and the group chief executive officer, Becky, Mr. Numalo, for being part of this briefing. It was deliberate that all the technical questions were answered by VLAP and not Mr. Marokani, because he's the chief nuclear officer. So he bears the responsibility for ensuring that all the necessary protections are in place. So what is the story out of this briefing? Is that those protections were able to perform as expected. And that's part of the reason why we operated there for 40 years, safe operation. And that's the reason why the NNR gave us another 20 years of operation. It's because of the competent nature of the team led by VLAP, one of the most experienced and distinguished nuclear engineers in this country. So thank you very much, VLAP. You could see he displayed himself very well because he possesses exceptional technical qualities. So Koeberg is in good hands. And it is for this reason that we are going to go ahead with our 5.2 gigawatts of new nuclear build program, because of the confidence we have in people like Mr. Numalo, Mr. Marokani, and the rest of the team that is at Koeberg and within the stable of Eskom. I want to say to the rest of the country that we'll continue on this path, just being transparent. We'll communicate as and when we find it necessary. In this instance, we found it necessary, notwithstanding what the VLAP has indicated, that this incident essentially is not reportable. It's not of significance. So in the general context of the parameters of what constitutes significance, he was able to show you that the exposure of our workers to these three incidents, I think the highest was about 20 microsieverts, as opposed to what is the regulator says you could be exposed to the tolerance level up to 20,000. So it's 0.1%. That exposure. And in fact, if we were to do the test here, you might find that some of us are here in this room, our exposure has been higher than that. So it's important that there's that appreciation. But we also understand the moment, I think, as the ministry, that we are entering that build program. So there could be attempts from somewhere to undermine the build program. What we'll continue to do is to carry our people with us, so that we're able to ensure that there's confidence in the build program, and also more significantly, to dispel any myth around any secrecy with regards to Koeberg. As I said earlier on, we want to undermine misinformation, disinformation, and propaganda, and share with our people genuinely what's happening without holding back what the true facts are. So we want to say to the communities around the immediate vicinity of Koeberg that it is safe. I want to say to the rest of the country, we are progressing with the nuclear build program. As I've indicated, we'll come out to the public and share with you what will constitute the next step of nuclear build. We will build the 5.2 gigawatts. We are more than confident of that program. So I want to take the opportunity to thank you very much for having joined us this morning. Wish you a blessed and happy Sunday. Thank you very much.
Change another